Hello, my name is Glenn Robinson, and welcome to another of my reflective walks. Today I want to discuss the impact of the pandemic that we're all experiencing, and also consider um, what is trauma. To start off with, it's worth thinking about how we would conduct ourselves in normal times. When we cross the road, we have certain risk management tools. So we'll take a look left, take a look right, listen out for any traffic, and we do that with a lot of things in our lives. We're aware of danger, and partly it comes from our experience, especially as a child growing up and initially not being aware of any danger. I have a young daughter who, I'm very aware of the fact that she might not always stop before crossing the road. So with those considerations, the way in which we manage risk is learned generally. Then as we grow older, we have an horizon of different things that we become aware of, and we become more cautious eventually in lots of ways in many of the activities that we pursue. One example may be driving, for example. You would perhaps, as a young person, still not be fully aware of the impact of reckless or dangerous driving. So we may be aware, for example, of what the rules are, but we may not psychologically or emotionally fully comprehend the impact of a false move, so to speak. I think then things then do become a bit more settled, and we get ourselves in a position where we can go through life in a kind of almost subconscious or unconscious way, where the way in which we manage that risk becomes like second nature. Then if something comes along that was unexpected, that is shocking, our whole sense of safety with being in the world can be, and often is, undermined. I think the pandemic is a good example of that. I think when we consider the response, especially during the early weeks and months, a lot of people had this sense of unreality or unbelief in terms of the impact of COVID-19. Part of that unbelief perhaps acted as a motivating factor for conspiracy theories, etc. But it's worth considering from a psychological point of view that to acknowledge such a risk also opens up other avenues of trepidation. The logic might be that by considering that there's something that has came out of the blue, outside of our awareness, outside our field of vision, one might legitimately ask, what other risks are there out there that we're not aware of? And that, I think, is the key to trying to understand the trauma that many of us experience with these types of events. It becomes very difficult to manage in a unconscious or subconscious way things that are outside of our awareness. we naturally want to protect ourselves to make sure that we feel and are safe. But of course, we can't be ever 100% invulnerable. So that kind of begs the question that how do we deal with trauma? How does one reconcile the fact that we are vulnerable to things outside of our control? One of the ways in which I've considered this question is to try to face the ultimate, face, straight on. Of course, the worst that could possibly happen is that I would pass away, I would die, or my loved ones would die. And in that situation, trying to incorporate the question of death is ultimately a very difficult thing. We in a sense confront some of the biggest philosophical issues. We look at the meaning of life, and to a large extent the meaning of life comes from the recognition that we are not mortal. We don't always have control of our life events. We're all in a sense on borrowed time. I don't think this is depressing as one might initially imagine. I think it's a valuable thing, because once you're okay with that insight, you no longer need to be forced into constantly looking out for danger of thinking about where the next risk is coming from. For me, living a meaning of life means caring for the people who are close to me, caring for everybody generally, as best as one can do that. We all, of course, have limited resources, and also, in some sense, being okay with the fact that we don't know when the ultimate end is. That, I think, is a motivator. I want to make every day count. I want to make sure that I treat others in a right and respectful way. And I think from there, to some extent, I am resigned to the fact that I don't have complete control over the circumstances or the outcomes in which I live. If you find this episode useful, entertaining, thoughtful, please like and consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you.